Thank you for joining us for Working Through the Word, a ministry of the Richmond Church of Christ. Let's join our pulpit minister, Mike Johnson, as he brings today's lesson.
Every preacher appreciates comments after sermons or lessons, but today I had the best one ever. Wanda Weekly helped me a lot because she said, "You and I are just alike. We do not procrastinate. We intentionally wait because we work better under pressure." Isn't that great? I'm able to say now that I am not a procrastinator. I always thought I was. Now I'm just a pressure worker. Didn't know that. I am so glad. Thank you, Wanda, for helping me. So, we think about procrastination and how it affects us spiritually. The other question is, what are you doing now? Where you've been is not as important as where you are. Where you want to be begins with where you are. And noticing, working with, appreciating people and how they compare to where you are can be helpful. But it is most important to know where you are in comparison to God and what He wants, not with someone else. So while we've asked the question, what am I waiting for? Tonight we think about, what am I doing now? And I think that is important. Now, first of all, we need to recognize that patience, or we could say waiting, or maybe the best term, long suffering. This is a virtue. It is a good thing, being patient. In Ecclesiastes 7 in verse 8, the wise man said, "The end of a thing is better than the beginning." And his point is that we, with patience, we can make things better over time, and we can look back and we can see the growth. And so it's a virtue patiently to work things over time. Paul said to Timothy in 2 Timothy 2 and 24 that the servant of God, one of the qualifications is you must be patient. And if you are not a patient person, if you're not working on patience, then you're not serving God as you should and as identified what a servant of God is. And of course, we all know that patience or long-suffering is included in Galatians 5 and 22 as fruit of the Spirit, which then says, if I have the Spirit of God within me, then I have patience, or I'm working on patience, or I have access to patience. And so patience is a virtue. And while we're saying what is happening right now that's important, I want us to remember that patience is obviously a good thing. So, patience almost sounds like procrastination, but it's not. So what's the difference? If we say, We don't want to procrastinate, that is, put things off, and yet we're supposed to be patient, waiting for things. How are those two things different? Well, one, patience perfects, but procrastination pauses. James chapter 1, James said, "Let patience have its perfect work, that you may be complete." Patience waits, but at the same time is perfecting us while being patient. Procrastination pauses us and stops and shuts us down. That's the difference between the two. Patience is productive activity, whereas procrastination is non-productive. Lamentations 3:25. God is good to those who seek Him, who wait patiently for Him. Did you notice the connection between waiting patiently and yet seeking? So patience is constantly productive, whereas if we are a procrastinating person, we're not producing anything. Patience is different from procrastination because patience puts something into my life that I'm preparing for the future. In Luke 21, Jesus had just told them about the coming destruction of Jerusalem. And in it, he closed with these interesting words: "Through patience, possess your souls." In other words, he says, patiently you go through what's coming. And if you go through it patiently, you are possessing your soul. You're preparing your soul for something while being patient. And finally, patience puts peace in your life. Patience puts peace in your life. Whereas procrastination causes chaos. When we procrastinate, our minds are cluttered. We have guilt. We have problems because we're not doing what we know we ought to do or what we want to do. And so, when patience, we find peace. Paul wrote to the Romans and he said, "It is now time to awake, high time," he said, "to awake from sleep." Why? Romans 13, verse 11. "For now, our salvation is nearer than when we first believed." We need to be people who find peace in patience, because procrastination causes us difficulty and chaos. So what are you doing now? Think about the importance of now. Now, I understand that we are people who are in the moment. That's what we are. For instance, how many times have you sat in a drive-through line at a restaurant and wondered, what in the world is going on up there? Can't they serve this thing now? The other day I went to Jimmy John's for somebody, and I think they advertise freaky fast, and they were freaky slow. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, you made an ad and you promised. No. Or how many times have you sat at a traffic light in Richmond? There are 2 or 3 of them that seem never to change. Now, it may be because I fell asleep waiting for it to change, and then I woke up on the 2nd or 3rd one, but it seemed like it just never changed. We are people who have become accustomed to now. Here's the one that I think about quite often. Think back when you first started using computer and you were searching things. And back then, because of the way it was working, it's your first opportunity. As it was searching for it, you're thinking, man, this is really cool. And you just sit there for 3 or 4 minutes while it produces everything you're looking for. And you're going, this is really cool. And now, if we don't get it immediately in 30 seconds, we think something's wrong. Now is who we are. Now is what we want. We are people of the now. We also are people who want to be fixed now. We want things to be changed now. That's why we're not patient people very often. But we do need to know the importance of now. What are you doing now? The word now is important because it reminds us that we live in time. And in time, there is work to do. I'm crucified with Christ, nevertheless I live, yet not I, but Christ lives in me. And the life that I now live in the flesh, the life that I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me, gave himself for me. I'm in time. I'm in flesh. And right now is what God expects from me. Now, this life is what God is looking at. So I need to be aware of time because it's now. And now says, this is the only time you're guaranteed. The times of ignorance God overlooked. But now he commands all men everywhere to repent. Acts 17 and 30. I need to be reminded of the fact that I have to do something in time, but I need to be remembered that the now is the only guaranteed time I have. This is it. We know many stories of a moment that ended and time was no more for that person. You and I, what are we doing now? Because this is the only time that we have. I don't have another one. Time. Now is important because now says, according to Romans 13 and verse 11, now is this time for me to recognize that the end is coming. As I said, the end is nearer than when we first believed. It's not true that someone really is closer to death than anyone else. We say that a lot. I'm young, you're old, you're closer to death than I am. Not true. And Paul said to the Romans, the end of your salvation is closer now than when you first believed, meaning every moment could be the last. Every moment, the now, could be the time that your life ends and you meet your reward. Now is important because now is the time that all things begin. Everything begins with a now. Right now, Paul in Acts 18 was trying to preach to the Jewish people, and those people just rejected him, and he said, fine, now I'm going to go to the Gentiles. Now. Every new thing, everything begins with a now. What are you doing now? What are you waiting for? Acts 20. And verse 32 says that now defines the current state of where I am. Now, Paul said to those Ephesians, I commend you to God and to the word of his grace that is able to build you up and to give you an inheritance among all those who are sanctified. Paul looked at those brethren and he said, now I can commend you to God. That's the current state. Now is important. Now says, this is who I am. Not who you're going to be, but who you are. And now says, I can change. Now says, it's time to make a change. Romans 6 and verse 19, Paul was calling those Roman brethren to say, now it's time to move on. Now it's time to move past weakness. Now is very important. So what are you doing now? Putting it together, what am I doing now? Patiently. Let's each of us ask these questions of ourselves. What am I doing now, patiently, in time? I better make use of my time. I better make sure that in time I'm doing what I need to do. And what am I doing patiently in time? Number 2. What am I doing and what am I thinking patiently about eternity? What I'm doing in time affects what I'm going to have in eternity. What are you doing now for eternity? How important is that? Number 3, what now have I started in time looking for eternity? Where am I going to start? What are you going to do right now to start doing what needs to be done? Can you make a list? Can you prioritize? Let's ask this question. What am I planning now? What plans am I making? Or am I just going to fly by the seat of my pants? Am I just going to go haphazardly through life? Or am I making plans now? And finally, let us ask this question. What am I going to stop right now? What am I going to stop? If you're like me, you've stopped something 1,000,000 times. You've stopped. It's like the person who said, "Oh, I don't have any problem giving that up." Why? What do you mean? I've given it up 100 times. I know things that bother me. You know things that bother you. And maybe you, like me, you've given them up 100 times. What are you going to stop now? It is important for us to wait patiently for the Lord. But it's important for us to start now. Patience doesn't set me down to do nothing. Patience persistently works doing something that I start now. Tonight, hope you're ready to start now. Whatever it is between you and the Lord that you need to identify and say, now is when I start. Now is when I stop. Now is when I make plans. Because time is all I have, but I don't know when it's going to end in eternity. I hope that we can be people who work on overcoming spiritual procrastination by starting now to do something about it. Can we help you tonight as you begin that journey yourself while we stand and sing together?
We hope that you enjoyed today's broadcast, brought to you by the Richmond Church of Christ. We are located at 1500 Lancaster Road in Richmond, Kentucky. We meet at 9 a.m. each Sunday morning for Bible class, followed by our morning worship service held at 10 a.m. Our Sunday evening service is held at 6 p.m. Our midweek Bible study is held on Wednesday at 7 p.m. We have Bible classes available for all ages on Sunday mornings and Wednesday evenings. If you are in the area, we would love to have you as our honored guest. If you're looking for a home church, we would love to make you part of our family here in Richmond. We hope this has been a blessing to you and pray that you have been strengthened and encouraged. Have a blessed day.